Alrighty, so we all know that Handmaiden is one of the best classes in the game. She has incredible melee capabilities, she has really good sniping potential with access to the longbow, and probably the best clutch ability in the game. That's not even mentioning her great supportive aspects, and that her stamina buff is one of the best in the game, and the fast revives is very good as well. So with that being said, I don't really want to just make a normal guide on the Handmaiden. This guide isn't necessarily going to be the absolute best optimal build, but this is rather a build that is a way to have the most fun with the Handmaiden. So we're going to be going over 4 different weapons today. We're going to talk about the sword and dagger, the dual daggers, and the glaive. And first, of course, we all know that the sword and dagger is one of the best weapons in the game. If this is a weapon you like running, absolutely run it, because it is probably the best all-rounder. It's super safe at dealing with hordes. It's got pretty good armor damage, not quite as good as the dual daggers, and it's not quite as good at killing hordes as the sword, as we'll go over, or the glaive, but it is kind of an all-rounder. It doesn't necessarily exceed substantially in any direction, but it is above average, and probably a bit more than above average at pretty much everything. Also, I don't know why I have push block angle on this. You should not have push block angle. Attack speed is probably the go-to. Crit chance is good too. And so we don't really need to talk about the sword and dagger as much, because we've probably all used it at this point. There's hundreds of guides out there on how to use them, because they're the go-to. They're one of the best in the game. So then we'll start by talking about the 2 weapons that I'm really excited to talk about in this video. And the first one is the sword. Now, the sword is a weapon that doesn't look that great at a first glance. It doesn't really feel intuitive to use, because yeah, you can light spam, but there's also a lot better things you could be doing. So yeah, these are the stats I'm running with: crit chance, block cost reduction, swift slaying, you know, the usual. There's nothing really to stand out about that. But what you want to keep in mind is that when we're using the sword and the glaive, we're going to be using a slightly different build than when we're using the sword and dagger or the dual daggers. Now, and this is what I'm talking about. With the sword and the glaive, you want to take Azrai Alacrity. And that's because the push attack is very good on both of these weapons, and you don't necessarily need the extra crit from Oak stance to, do a really good amount of damage. And also, I have 2 different trinkets I run on these respectively. Now, for the glaive and the sword, I run stamina recovery on my trinket, which I know is not necessarily usual, but we're going to talk about that more here in a second. And what I run with the dual daggers and sword and dagger is crit chance and curse resistance. You could have whatever else besides curse resistance. That's mostly just for playing on legend and trying to get grimoires. And just to briefly go over the rest of the talents, if you're running glaive or sword, smiter might be a little bit better. I haven't done enough testing to really know which one is better for sure. I know smiter will probably be really good on the glaive. It will help you killing elites, but honestly, I don't know if you need that much help killing elites with the glaive. And the level 20 talent is what makes this build what it is. We're taking Willow Stance, and essentially you get stacks of Willow Stance every time you dodge, up to 3 stacks, and each one increases your attack speed. So you'll have a bonus 15% attack speed if you dodge a lot. And I know the better talent is probably Wraith Walk, because that makes you almost unkillable and lets you get out of essentially any situation. But like I was saying, we're going with the fun build. We're doing Willow Stance. And as a side note, if you're filling in as a special sniper, then you definitely want to take Quiver of Plenty. Handmaiden is actually pretty good at filling in on special sniping. Now for the level 30 talent, we go with Gift of Ladriel, because I know these 2 can be good. I know Blade Dancer and Power Pain can be good, but that requires you to dash through enemies, and I've noticed with the way I play Handmaiden, that puts me way out of position. And I think it's just really awkward to try to use your ult to dash through enemies, and I don't think it's the best way to use the ult, but there are people out there that will tell you that these 2 are really good, and they have a decent argument. So real quick, the combos for the sword are pretty simple. Our main combo is just going to be a push attack and a light, and then a push attack and a light again. And you'll see pretty quick here why we take stamina recovery. Because of the already crazy stamina recovery we have from our passive, the extra bit allows us to essentially do this forever and never really run out of stamina. If you're really spamming it, you can eventually, but then you just have to block for a bit and it comes back like super fast. So, and the reason this is good on the sword in particular is that you see the push attack for it has a lot of cleave. It does a fair amount of damage, but it has the linesman trait too, which means that it's going to absolutely cleave through hordes. And the same thing for the glaive when we talk about the glaive here in a little bit. And so yeah, that's the main combo for dealing with small enemies, dealing with trash, is you just do push attack and a light attack. Now the best combo for dealing with elites is a heavy and a light. And the reason for that is that it's really easy to hit headshots with this. Now technically, I think just spamming heavies would do more damage to elites, but if you're hitting headshots, this is going to kill them really fast because this combo is really fast. You don't even have to reset it. You just heavy, light, and then heavy, light. You don't have to cancel at all. Now another thing about the sword is look at the effective dodge count for the sword. Now on Handmaiden, we're going to be basically spamming dodges non-stop. So I think this is one of the biggest reasons that I think it makes for the ideal weapon for the Handmaiden. Now let's take a look at the Glaive. Now the Glaive is probably Kerillion's best weapon at dealing with trash. It just absolutely cleaves through hordes. Not only that, but the heavy attack does a ton of damage. Now if we look at the numbers, the second heavy attack does 32 damage, and that's a lot, not to mention the first one as well, and these two are in very quick succession of each other. So if you hit a headshot with one of them, you're going to kill a storm vermin with just one heavy combo. And now the combos are super simple. All it is you want to start usually by doing a push attack, and you just spam lights. As long as you're throwing a push attack in there every now and then, you're going to be getting value out of Azrai or Alacrity, and you're going to be chopping through hordes because of the great cleave numbers, and the attack speed from our build is really what makes this really good. So now we talk about the dual daggers, and now the blue stats are actually important on this one. You want to take crit chance and attack speed because that's going to allow the dagger to do what it does best, and that's attack really fast and crit a lot. Of course, we take Swift Slaying as well. Obviously, it's best if you have the red version. So when we're doing this build, we just switch over to Oak Stance and we grab our Trinket, the one that has crit chance. Also, I would make sure that you're running attack speed on your charm. I like to run crit power. I know crit power isn't necessarily the greatest thing in the game, but this is a fun build. And I'll be honest with you, it's not that great at killing hordes or killing trash. It feels like you're doing a lot, but you're really not, and the reason for that is the cleave on the daggers is just absolutely awful. If we look at the cleave, you see it's 2.98 on all of the lights, and if we look at the mass of a Skaven slave on Kata, it is 2. So essentially, that means we're going to be cutting through one slave and a half for every swing of the dual daggers. Now, granted, you attack a lot, but it doesn't do nearly as much as, say, the glaive or the sword when it comes to dealing with trash. However, this weapon is very, very good at single target damage. It is great against bosses, and it is great against Chaos Warriors and Storm Vermin. And the combos are the most basic in the game. When you're fighting hordes, all you want to do is just spam left click, and then when you're fighting elites, all you want to do is just spam heavies. But the dual daggers are very, very good at dealing with bosses and elites. So yeah, this video is running a bit long for my taste at this point, so we're actually going to break this video up into 2 parts. The next part is going to be looking at gameplay and kind of the overall strategic approach to playing Handmaiden. And it's kind of funny, I got through this whole video and just realized that I forgot to even talk about the spear and shield. That's also an S tier weapon, but no,
Granted, it's a pretty straightforward weapon. You just use your push attacks and the lights and the overhead heavy when you want to kill elites. But anyway, yeah, thank you for watching. I appreciate you spending your time watching me talk about Vermintide. If you liked it, please subscribe, please like the video, and I will see you on the next one.